Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is, wherever you're at. Welcome back to Continuous and Never Ending Improvement. I'm Jake Shortfager, joined as always by Miss Olivia White, Miss Samantha White, and Mr. Jalen Whisker Phillips. But we're happy to have you here with us today. Like, comment, subscribe, share, if you like the content, that is, but we hope you do. And today we're going to be talking about change, I forget the exact topic, but we're going to be talking about change. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to our lovely co-host here.
Yeah, so I wanted to start more with the negative side of change, and as I was kind of researching this, I think it helped me accountable a little bit. So I'm just going to kind of go through.
We're here for you.
I'm realizing, thank you guys. Well, you're going to need to be here for yourselves in a second once I read them all. Because I know we probably all experience these or do these, but as I was looking it up, I just saw some tactics, which I guess these are actually classified more as manipulating change, but there's a couple different ones. Shame, such as pointing out how dumb someone's actions were. Guilt, comparing behaviors of theirs to others. Threat, yelling the consequences if they continue to have the same actions. Condemnation, is that what that says?
Or condemnation.
Condemnation, just putting them down in general. Critical, always pointing out their faults no matter how small they are. And then cynical, pointing out how they did do something good, but it is out of a selfish nature. So, wow, initial thoughts.
That was a lot. There's definitely things that I feel like I point out and others what I should be more self-reflective on, because of course I do some of those things, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I do a lot of these things to Jalen, I think. Sorry, brother.
It's okay. Rip the Band-Aid off.
Yeah. I think a big one would be maybe critical. I mean, I'm sure I can do. Oh, I don't want to put.
Smorgasbord.
I don't want to put myself past any. I'm not above any of them. I try my best not to, but I think just for the sake of confession, I mean, I'm sure I've done some of them all, which, I mean, just the title of them though is interesting to me, because obviously we were just talking about faith, and he takes away our shame or guilt. He doesn't condemn, Jesus, that is, and I think, again, it just goes to the point of focusing on what I need to repent from, and not, doing these things to other people to try to ignore my own faults.
Yeah. You go.
Go
Ladies
ahead.
first. No, seriously, ladies first. I'm not gonna forget mine.
I was just gonna say, I probably use shame and guilt the most, and I truly do think on the main topic, I'm using it because I want a positive change in that person, but it's good seeing this on paper and reflecting because it's not really motivating positive change. I mean, I don't know, maybe, but not with the right, it's not the right process, because then that person's gonna go into it feeling less than, or they're gonna have a comparing, guilting mindset, so.
Yeah, guilt for me was big, just the comparing aspect. It's easy to be, it's just that, first things first, I'm sure, and I know I've done them all. Let me start by saying that. I'm not perfect, but, I was getting to the comparing one. I feel like the guilt, it's just easy to not feel like you're actually, what's the word I'm looking for?
Richard?
Oh, happy.
Sorry.
I know it is. I know that's thing, Richard. But with the comparing things. Dang, I completely lost my train of thought.
I'm sorry.
You're good. Honestly, it wasn't important, probably.
Yeah,
It was.
Obviously, I know I'm saying comparing things.
Yeah, also I was reading like where this came from. It was interesting because it was more geared towards children and relationships, but part of it was like
Yeah.
all of these. There's a reason we do these. They work, but it went on to say like they temporarily work, and it was like as far as children, like you're going to raise teenagers that end up angry or they're going to resent you, and then once they do gain their independence, they're not going to want to be around you much because you used all these manipulation tactics on them. And then it was like very similar in a relationship, like if you use these on your spouse, yeah, it might temporarily work, but you're building a long-term resentment because kind of like you said, you're making them feel like they're less than.
Yeah, it makes me think a lot about, I guess, like what kind of change, like it's gonna incite a change, but like what kind of change is it bringing about? You know what I mean? Like, is it a good change or is it a bad change? It's gonna bring like resentment. And I know I was just reading about step 10, which is a lot of self-reflection, but in there it talks about like motives. You know what I mean? Like, what are the motives behind like pointing some of these things out? I guess, or using these tactics of change, so to speak. When I don't know. Yeah, I guess it just made me think too. Like almost like the Michael Jackson song. If you want to make a change, you gotta change the man in the mirror first. Let that light shine through rather than. And staying focused on that rather than, losing it in the fact of let me change everything around me rather than like what do I need to change in myself.
It's funny because like I feel like someone can go in the tent and use one of these good ones, like make it a conversation and ask questions, and then if they're not getting what they want, then they're gonna start guilting. Like you can go in with the right strategy per se or idea of how to go about the conversation, and if you're not patient with that person or realize maybe not the first time or second time or third time we talk it's gonna happen, we can just quickly resort to starting to manipulate change in the negative way that will affect their attitude whether they change or not around it.
Yeah, that's interesting because like looking at these two, I think I personally do a lot of these to myself, so it's like if like opening up those conversations is probably going to lead that person to one of these doing it to themselves. It's like if they're going to be in the mirror like guilting themselves and comparing themselves, it's like why are you tag teaming them and jumping in and being like with endless threats and stuff. And yeah, it holds a lot of accountability, but I think part of it too, and I'm curious to hear your guys' takes, like I'm sure, I mean, our parents aren't perfect. Is there any of these that your parents really like leaned into growing up?
Yes. Guilt, I think, and also, I don't know, mainly guilt. It's funny because there's a Tate McRae song that's really popular right now, and she says like, pretty much the same thing, which is funny. Like my mom was raised full of guilt, and little did she know that's all her kids would grow to feel. And it's like one of those things, you gotta break the generational curse at some point. But this is like one of the many things that can get passed down is your ways to handle how to like try to change someone's behavior. Because of course you're doing that all the time as a parent to your kid. You're trying to teach them the way and like. Don't touch that, don't do that.
Yeah. I think I had a lot of threat, which like I don't know if you guys have ever seen a quote where it's like if you grew up with an angry man in the house, you will later in life still have that angry man in the house if you don't heal it. And it's like if you don't heal it, now you've become the person that is using these threatening tactics and like yelling at people. And I think a lot of it carries over, but it's like you said, you have to try to break it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, looking at it, I'm sure there were times where my parents did use at least one or two of them, but I mean, I can't say for a fact that they did or that it wasn't, deserved if they did growing up. And I mean, that's one thing too that I was just talking about recently with one of my friends from church. Was just like, I don't know how they did it. You know what I mean? They just were so patient and unconditionally loving for my whole life until like change came about, and I'm glad they. Part of me is like, were they enabling it? But like, they were just faithful to the fact that like they knew change eventually would come, and it did, and there was, because they went about things the way they did, there was like no resentment on my end towards them because of, well, they did this to me my whole life growing up, and even though, I was drinking and doing X, Y, Z, they shoved it down my throat, you know what I mean? Like, I can't say they even ever did that. It was just like, they just loved me through it, and now I'm thankful because there's, again, nothing to be resentful about towards them, even though there's things I had to apologize for that I'm sure, hurt them, and maybe they're resentful towards me for, but yeah, I can't say that there was ever much of that for me growing up, even though it would have been probably warranted.
Yeah.
Which I think is the hard part too, is, even when it's deserved not doing those things, and just, letting change come about in its own time, and having faith that it will.
Yeah, I feel like for me, like the guilt came in because this is gonna sound kind of like an annoying problem, but like I was so disciplined at having perfect attendance and being good at school that like that was something that was constantly said around me, like, oh, Sam's such a good kid, or like this, that, and the other. So then like I'm being compared in a good light, but now I have this like impossible standard of perfection that like I'm guilt tripping myself that I can't ever mess up, I can't make a mistake. And then it got to the point where in high school it was so overwhelming that I just wanted to be the opposite of that. I wanted to start drinking and like throwing parties because I've always had to be perfect, and like, I don't know, that it's funny, it seems like, is that a problem that someone holds you to a high standard? Yeah, because nobody is gonna reach that every time, and when you almost perpetuate that narrative of like, yeah, that's such a good kid, does everything right, then you're like, well, I don't wanna disappoint that person,
Yeah, you're like on pins and needles trying not to mess up now because it's just expected, and I think a lot of the praise gets lost too. Like, I mean, you were extremely smart growing up and they just kind of expected it from you at that point. Like, oh yeah, Sam will be on honor roll. Like, it's like, but there's still like a congratulation, I think, that can be necessary, and like praise involved too.
And it definitely led me to like hiding a lot of behaviors if I ever did something that wasn't, up to par. Instead of just being honest, like, I was like, oh, I should probably just keep that to myself,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that behavior can lead to like complacency too, like, just checking in and being like, hey, how are things going, are you on, like you said, just a praise and a thankfulness that that's the case, but to not stop like checking in, like, hey, how are you doing, and to just really be attentive still, rather than just expecting it, and being thankful and willing to help, rather than just using these manipulative tactics.
Yeah. What about you?
What are you about to say? I'm not gonna agree.
I was just gonna say, I mean, it sounds kind of harsh, but like sometimes you have to shift your mindset, and I kind of have recently, like, don't expect anything from anyone really. Like, be open, you can trust the people you trust, but like, it creates honestly a toxic environment for them and yourself when you're laying out expectations that they're unaware of. Like,
yeah, that was one of the healthy ways, is to set clear goals, but you have to be able to communicate it. It's like
you have to be like, why are you
Mindset.
treating me like this, but you never even
That's how you
spoke
want
on
to be
it.
treated, yeah.
Shame for me, a lot of shame. Shame on me. But I mean, not much has changed. Obviously, just a lot of energy, always getting into something and just doing something that I shouldn't really be doing, and pretty much getting pointed out that it's not the smartest thing to do. But honestly, I was saying that to say, like, I was just thinking about like growing up, and then like in high school, and that period of time where now all I'm thinking about is trying to just, all I'm focused on is staying mid-average and not too much, not too little, because I don't want to stick out, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm already embarrassed anytime I do stick out. So like, I think that's what led to me taking that mediocrity route. I'll go straight to community college. I don't want none of this, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'll take that and chill, because
Well, you definitely grew out of that.
Yes, you did.
I think you stick out now.
Sort down, man.
Taking a leap of faith.
Yeah.
Can't hide who you are forever.
That's funny.
I think it's hard to single it out, but I'm curious what you guys have to say. Which one do you think you respond the worst to?
That's really tough.
I should have learned these before this.
Maybe cynical for me. I've had that happen a couple times where like I've helped people out, or you know, whether it be financially or just like went out of my way for them, and they have told me like, oh, you just did that, like I don't know, whether it be to like feel good about yourself or selfish intent or have power in the relationship or whatever, and like it makes me really defensive. I feel like I'm always like, no, like that's just so annoying because I know I did that with a pure intent for you to throw it up in my face, but then why would I be so defensive if there wasn't a layer there, you know? Maybe it's just a complex per se, because like, you know, people do take things for granted or take advantage of it, but I feel like I have to prove my love through that. It's interesting though.
Yeah, I think that brings out just like another layer of hurt, because you're like, no, like I've done this so many times just to help people, and it's like then you start responding with that anger, but it's like you don't know the hurt that came behind the multiple times I've done that. Like, obviously, I mean, I think it just goes back to my childhood threat. I mean, I don't like yelling, and it's made me a yeller, which I think I'm realizing that now. Like I yell too, but I can't stand yelling. So why am I approaching yelling with yelling? I don't know.
For me, I think critical.
Ooh.
Yeah, I think just critical. I had your number. Come on, no, I'm fine. But no, I'm just like nitpicking. That's all I can comes to mind is like nagging, nitpicking. It's like, are we really doing this right now? Like, just tell me a grand overall view, and I'll be cool. Like, you have to tell me every little thing, because now you're coming at, I mean, you know what I'm saying. Now you're throwing rocks at a glass house. I don't know if that's what I'm trying to say, but it works.
You said it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I respond to any of these,
Yeah. I agree.
but I mean, yeah, like you said, it's kind of hard to pick one. I was leaning towards cynical, just because I know something I had to realize is that, like, I can even do selfless things in a selfish manner when my heart's not in the right place, you know, and that was a big revelation I had to have, you know, it's like, well, I feel like it's selfless, but what's the point of me actually doing that? Is it because I want to help, or is it because, look at me, look how selfless I am, you know? And, yeah, I don't know. It's hard for me to pick one. I think I was trying to pick, I think, between the three you guys said, threat, condemnation, or threat, critical, and cynical, are three that I would probably be one of them, but also, I mean, yeah, I don't know, maybe condemnation then. I'll pick a different one. Just with being put down, there's no like constructive, you know what I mean, just putting me down for something I did wrong. Like at least critical, like pointing out my flaws, like okay, maybe I didn't see that flaw, you know. Cynical, okay, maybe that was being selfish and I didn't see it, you know. Threat, okay, maybe I need that threat of consequence to change, you know what I mean. Comparing behaviors, maybe I need that a little bit. Maybe I need to know how down I am, but like just putting me down for without any upside to it, I think maybe that would be one, you know, just condemnation. If I had to pick a different one.
They're all tough.
Yeah, none of them are good.
I think that one just has like the least upside, I guess.
Yeah.
If there's any upside to them, like I'm just gonna put you down. It's like that's just the the most raw, I guess.
Yeah, that's like breaking someone down to a shell of themselves.
It's almost like shame with the like pointing out how dumb, only you're just like telling them they're dumb. You know what I mean? For doing that rather than
I will say
taking
outside,
action.
Yeah.
like outside of yelling though, condemnation could have an upside because I feel like it's really clear to look at that other person very quickly as like, oh, I shouldn't, like you're clearly acting out of like manipulation or whatever, like not being the best version of yourself. Where some of these you could be like, huh, and like it would make you think, even if, but like that one I feel like if you're just putting me down, I'm gonna be like, okay, like what are you going
need
through?
help.
Yeah, but
Yeah. But to that point, that's why I think there's like not a lot of upside to it. I mean,
Yeah.
It's it can be pretty deflective. You know what I mean? I can go one of two ways. I can do that and not address what the actual issue is, miss the point if there is something I need to change because I'm just gonna deflect it back to them,
yeah.
or I'm gonna just feel terrible about myself without, feel like that person doesn't care, like I'm alone.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe that one for me at least.
So how do we fix it?
Yeah, so there's lots of positive ways to motivate change. And we kind of talked about debate that kind of led to us doing this topic. One is to address the resistance in these conversations or whatever it may be. You have to view the resistance or disagreement, whatever it is, as a natural part of the change process and address it constructively.
Amen.
I think sometimes people try to like dance around what they're getting at, like even when using some of the manipulating ways to motivate change, they're trying to do it in a strategic way, but it's like sometimes you just gotta lay it out there and like address like, this is like kind of how Simon Sinek says like, I'm not good at confrontation, just to start off the conversation. I might not say all the right things, but this is why I wanna say this, because I feel like you could be better. You know, and kind of like set it up with saying like, I'm gonna address something here, but like, I don't know. And then highlighting benefits, which I think kind of is the opposite of that, like show how the change can positively impact someone versus focusing on what they're doing now, how it's just negatively impacting them. Because I feel like sometimes people like stay in a space like that where they don't even know what doing something positive would look like they're so strayed so far from it. Promote psychological safety, so create an environment where people feel comfortable sharing their views without fear of ridicule or negative consequences. That's really important. I know I tell Jalen all the time, like time and place. Like if you're in the middle of doing a task or something, it's probably not like appropriate.
Could be though.
Like set up a meeting if it's professional, or like ask like, is now a good time to discuss this? And then yeah, make it a conversation, so engage in dialogue rather than delivering a monologue. I'm sure we've all been on the receiving end or have done. And I'm kind of curious, just some of those examples, or maybe you have other ways. What do you think has been successful for you to motivate change in someone in the past or more recently?
I would say mine would probably be promoting just like the psychological safety, because there's so many times in my life, and where now I'm reflecting, where I've been having all the wrong conversations in all the wrong spaces, but there's also the flip side where like I'm having a good time, say like I'm enjoying my Saturday night, and now it's like, okay, let's talk about hard things, and it's like there's naturally already resistance, because it's like, why are you doing this right now? But I could say the same for me. It's like, why am I doing this in the middle of a task, like you said, or in the middle of something? Like, you're already just starting with resistance. So I think it's helped to kind of take a step back and set a time and a place and clear expectations. Like, this is going to be a hard conversation. I'm not just going to spring it on you out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I would agree with that 1,000%, because for me a big part of it is just like, because for me to change on behalf of somebody, I've got to really trust that somebody, and that's how I at least can see that I trust you. You know what I'm saying? If that space is there, then like there's a lot of trust and like with your vibes and whatnot. Because I think vibes are very important. But I said to say I try to treat people how I want to be treated. So just always making sure like that. First off, let me just say when I'm looking for change in somebody, I'm not good at this. Okay, I'm not good at this at all. However, that's what I would want to do, and I just see that being very, very important, making sure that space is there.
Yeah, I think for me it's just, being open to change in myself, I think, is the best way to create, like, again, if you want an environment that's healthy for change, I think the best way to do that is just lead by example, and understand that there's things I need to change about myself too. Like nobody's perfect. And going into it with the like, hey, this is what I want to talk about, but I understand there's some things I need to change too. Maybe you can help me understand what those are. You know what I mean? And that's my aim, is to help you understand, not to just come off as like we were seeing with that debate of just like that know-it-all, like I'm always right attitude. Like just understanding there's almost always something I'm wrong about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In some shape, it might be small. It's like the yin and yang thing. You know what I mean? There's a little bit of good in the bad, and there's a little bit of bad in the good. And understanding that that's always gonna be the case, even with, I guess, change. There's always, even if I'm going to somebody and saying, hey, yeah, this is what I see, and like you said, I'm not good at confrontation. I'm not good at talking about these things, but I think there's some things that we need to change, not just that you need to change and put it on them. Just be open to leading by example in that realm.
That's a good one. I was surprised maybe it was on there, but not to see that. I think I would say highlighting benefits is something I'm strong at, just because like I do consider myself professionally a visionary, so you're kind of always painting a picture of what things could be with change. But I will say where it could grow in that is like you plant that seed, you paint that picture, and then you have faith and wash your hands of it and walk away. You don't the next day then say, well, they're still doing it, so let me throw some shame in with the vision I gave them, or like, so I think that's just having patience and faith to say, like, I planted a seed, that was what I was called to do in this moment, and letting it go. But yeah, and you kind of touched on it in like one of the last questions I had, and maybe even answer the question is like, should we even be like trying to make people change? I don't know. Or should we just be leading by example? I mean, sometimes we need to
I think it's
somebody
yes.
needs to shake me or wake me up, but like
I think it's yes and now. I think it's time and place.
That's my answer.
Oh yeah, it's trademark. But like it's just tough because I feel like what we get caught up in is like change for us. You know what I'm saying? And you can tell yourself whatever you need to tell yourself and spin it however you need to spin it, so you're not the bad guy and that they really should change because this and that and that and that and that. But realistically, like that's why I'm like it's yes and no, because I believe everything happens for a reason. We're all in each other's lives for a reason, and people can learn a lot from other people. You know what I'm saying? Like that's a huge source to learn from, and it's just like that's when it's just like just letting life happen, if that makes sense. And like I don't know how to say it grammatically, but it's really just living life and letting go, letting God,
Yeah, I think it depends on the person and the circumstances. Like it's like different of like giving them an ultimatum to change versus like motivating them to change for themselves. But I mean, if it's someone that you can see like if they do change something, you'll change your reaction and change how you act on it. I think you can consider it being worth it to you, but I don't know, it depends on the person. There's some people in life where you're like, even if they did change, everything I feel is going to overweigh that, and then it's not even going to matter. So it's like, why am I trying to get this person to change when it's not going to change how I feel? But
that's a whole nother podcast.
I think it's no,
Okay.
I'm gonna go with one answer on this one.
I like this.
I think it's no, just because. I mean, one thing I've had to understand about myself is, I mean, I can't even change myself without God's help. So there's instances where, you know, I mean, people who want to change can come for help in terms of like accountability and, you know, just prayer and things like that. But there's only one who can change us. You know what I mean? And that's not even ourselves. You know,
Yeah.
that's the power of the Holy Spirit coming in and changing us from the inside out by accepting that. But yeah, I think we have to understand. Bless you.
Thank you.
Bless
Bless
you.
you.
There's like a control there thing where like, if I'm just trying to change people, like I mentioned, I'm just ignoring what I need to change in myself a lot of times and thinking that, well, if I just get everything exactly how I want it, everything will be good. When it's like, really, like, how do I know what's best? You know, do I even know what's best for myself to know what's best for somebody else or for the actual greater good? Or do I just, you know, someone, like in terms of being an alcoholic, if there's somebody who wants to change, like I can help them be accountable in that and tell them what worked for me in terms of which is just surrendering to the fact that I'm powerless over alcohol, but there's one who has all power, and that one's God. Maybe find him now. But yeah, the fact that, you know, I can help if I have experience in that in terms of being accountable and just supporting and loving them where they're at. But I think accepting that, you know, we can't change anybody, you know, no matter how hard we try, even myself. If there are things that I change in myself a little bit, just leave the burnout, because again, I'm doing it on my own strength, and it only lasts for so long at that point, until I'm tired or resentful. And so yeah, I don't think we should be trying to make people change just because in its own time, you know, everything will change as it's needed to, you know, and there's a greater plan that I don't understand. That, you know, why would I try to change something that might, well, not even that might change that, because nothing I do can change the greater plan. So, I mean, just understanding that, that's why, just looking in the mirror and searching my own heart on, you know, I think if there's any time where I do feel like, man, I need to change that about that person, like, that immediately to me is like, why do I feel like I want to change that person or that thing, you know, rather than just accepting and showing unconditional love at that point. And I mean, that's where like the accountability comes in, is maybe we can help like people recognize things, you know, and I would want, like you were saying, treat people how you want, like if there's something about myself that I don't even recognize, I would want that pointed out, but not in a controlling way of like you're threatening consequences or making me feel shameful about it, just, you know, in a loving way that like, hey, you know, maybe this isn't so good, but God loves you, and you know, He wants to help you change. And, but it starts with wanting to change, and if that person doesn't want to, like you were saying, with some people, it does depend on the person and their desire to actually grow and change from whatever it may be. It's causing them problems.
Yeah. I feel like, as long as, if that person's seeking change or kind of like complaining about where they're at, and you go about it with the positive ways, for me at least, like what has been the most effective, I feel, is making a conversation, asking me questions, because then I'm kind of coming up with it on my own, even if they were leading me down that way, which like my friend Maria, who I just visited in Boston, did all these things very successfully, and it felt safe, and I think was effective. I mean, her mom's a psychiatrist, so maybe like some of those skills rubbed off on her, but in my circle of 5, like I would put her in a spot where she's one of those people that lifts me up. And I think that those are some of the qualities, if you can do this well when someone's looking for it, that can make people be the ones that like lift you up, or role models per se, or mentors, almost like are constantly trying to master these skills and communications.
Yeah, it's definitely important to have. But yeah, I mean, I think you can definitely lead people in recognize change too, because even the bad things, like one of the things you hear so much growing up is it's just, oh, they just are how they are, or boys will just be boys, or that's just how girls are. And it's like, I can't stand that. It's like, it does come to a point where you do need to motivate some kind of change, because that's not fair for the future of other people. Like there's a lot of people that I know that'll just do bad, and the people around them are just like, well, it's just are how they are. Like, that's not, maybe we should try to motivate some positive change here. Like, they're hurting people. Like,
Yeah. I mean, the only thing though with that, and like we've seen it so many times, is like they will get to a point where they will seek it though, and until they do, it might fall on deaf ears. So I think that kind of is the key. Like, we can definitely help people change when they're ready for it.
yeah,
Yeah.
you can't force it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think to your point, like, you can instill in people, like, what's right and wrong, you know, without, like, you need to change it, like, doing this manipulative thing.
Yeah.
You know, just teaching them what truth is and what's good and evil and right and wrong, you know, and the differences between that. But again, it falls back to, like, you know, until that change happens, like, I'm gonna love them anyways, and enough to tell them, like, hey, that's not necessarily right, but understand that I can't change them. You know what I mean? God can work through me to point those things out in terms of, again, just teaching them what's right and wrong in that. But I don't want to, it's dangerous for me to think that I can change them when it's really just, when their change is for God's glory, not for, look, I hope that person change, you know, because that's a slippery slope too. Thinking that, you know, I can help people more than I can. There's only one, and it's for His glory, not, even with me wanting to get into counseling, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just there to support people that are seeking change, you know, once I get to that point, not be the world's best counselor and look how many people I've helped, you know what I mean? Because I can't. All I can do is just be a shoulder for someone to lean on. Cry on.
Whatever they need,
If
the shoulder
cry,
for.
they need to lean and support, but I have to understand that there's not much outside of just being there and available that I can do.
Yeah.
And it's not for, like, my own credit or glory or anything.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's all I got.
Me too. I think I'm gonna do some self-reflecting after this.
Amen. So yeah, if you want to help be an ambassador of change, start with yourself.